what was the essence of this privatization? So we make the laws. We can tinker with the laws. We can abrogate the laws. We can repeal the laws. We can request that the federal government should take back those things from them, and so that we can revamp the power sector. So I think it should go far higher than this. We should invite even the Minister of Power to come here and tell us what he's doing in terms of bringing people to book. We have not seen people being prosecuted for some of these things. Like I said, people just took Adams Oshiomole, Senator Adams Oshiomole. You are a governor now, and you know that you gave light to a lot of communities. You bought transformers. Since you left office, no new transformer. And the people that took over are just making money from those your transformers and those lines you put. And they are not adding value at all. Instead, if a community's light collapses, they go away. The community will stay for a year or 2 years without light. Are we going to accept that? We are a parliament. We make the law for them to go to that stage. If they are not doing the correct thing, we can reverse that law. This parliament has the power. We can reverse the law.
Amen. And I pray that under your leadership, this Senate will find the courage to stop the extortion, abuse of power, lack of consumer protection, and barefaced stealing by various discourse. Mr. President, everything you said, including reminding us that nothing is foreclosed, that this parliament under your leadership has the power to revoke any wrongdoing that had been done. The justice of anything that is wrong is that it should be corrected. Personally, sir, people will say I committed class suicide in terms of NLC position with regards to private ownership when I supported, against the wish of my colleagues, the idea of privatizing electricity. My main argument then was that the beauty of capitalism and of private ownership is that in seeking to make profit, they will render in service. But the danger of public ownership is that whether they render service or not, they draw on the taxpayer treasury in the name of collecting what is there. I could never have imagined, as it is today, that a private person will collect money for services he did not render. And the Nigerian people are helpless. Even we here as privileged class have had to buy the transformer that I use here in the heart of Abuja. And to install it, I have to persuade, negotiate, and even effect payment to Abuja distribution, wherever, to connect the transformer I have procured personally with my resources. And hereafter, this transformer becomes the property of the disco. And every month, I am asked to pay bill on brand A or whatever.
On that your transformer.
Like you said, sir, every state governors, or most, spend public funds, buy transformers for communities. And then you still have to contribute money. Many of us, very soon when we go back to the electorate, they are going to tell us that for 1 year, for 2 years, they've had no light. What is the problem? No transformer. And then they ask you a senator to go and buy the transformer. You look for the money, you buy the transformer. And then they say, NEPA says you have to pay for them to connect the transformer to their grid. If cables are faulty, you buy the cable for them to install it. Even right now, I have requests from several communities asking me to buy the transformer and to get them connected. And yet, sir, the key element in distribution is transformer and cables, among others. So if these ones are now being procured by state government using public funds and individuals using their personal resources, what is the cost that these discos are incurring? Now, worse, the money they claim to have paid, because the logic of privatization was to inject private capital into these services.
God bless
In
you.
truth, they went to borrow from Nigerian deposition funds in various banks,
Kill the bank.
thereby killing some of those banks who have now become the liability of AMCON, which itself is also a contradiction about the logic of free market. And what they have borrowed, Mr. President, since the privatization took place, what they have borrowed through CBN and other sources is 10 times more than the amount they claim to have paid to become owners of those discos. Lastly, sir, as things stand, discos own no more than 60%, quote, own. Because it is arguable when the total money you have borrowed from public sources is more than your private capital, whether you can still claim to be privately owned. 40% as we speak still belong to the federal government. But sir, there are no governing councils, there is no governing board for this discourse. So federal government owns 60% of a business and it has no say in the board of those companies. So there is no corporate governance. The one of Edo is owned by a pharmacist, the wife is a banker, the pharmacy becomes the chairman, the banker becomes the MD. They mismanage Edo economy, Delta economy, Odo economy, Ekiti economy, and we are now right now in crisis. Even I, sir, that I don't live in Benin, my bill every month, I can't even afford it. So, Mr. President, I support the motion by my very good friend who lost an earlier motion, thanks to the vigilance of Mr. Senate President and your commitment to protect the poor. But this motion can benefit from a radical review, including the option of revoking the ill-conceived, ill-executed privatization and revisit it in line with the renewed agenda of Mr. President, that no one shall pay for services to a private Nigerian who did not render that service. We are going to a petrol station to buy fuel without a pump, and the person selling the fuel tells us this is the amount of liter I have injected. You have no means to verify it. May your leadership, sir, or common as it is, be the one that gives us the political will to revisit and protect Nigerians, rich or poor, who have been victimized by the fake new owners of this discourse. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well guided. In fact, to not, unless we take a critical look at what is going on in the electricity sector. I have to be very honest with you. It's a very serious matter. Because whether you like it or not, the essence of that privatization was for them to do what? To bring improvement, to inject new funds, to ensure seamless operations. But what we are seeing here is totally a different thing entirely. People just took advantage. They are not refunding money to states for even the infrastructure they took. And like you pointed out, federal government still retains some quantum of shares in those discos, but there is no governing board, so federal government does not know what is going on there. Maybe there is an assistant director somewhere who is a member of the board, and then that reports to his wife. It does not report to federal government. So what happens to the people? So chairman of power, you can't answer some of these questions unless we go deeper. And we must be prepared to recommend necessary legislative actions. We have a right to revoke even in fact, we can repeal the various acts that made the federal government to commit these blunders, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm scared, because if we come here and then we just go through these recommendations the way they are, it will look as if we are just trying to touch the symptoms without touching the disease. So, distinguished Senator Baribe, if we wish to advise that we step this down until we come up with a serious motion giving you powers and giving you further guidelines.
Thank you, Mr. President. In view of everything that has been raised to withdraw this report.
Mr. President, I thought there's a motion. Sorry, there's already a motion and well supported by Adams Oshiomole. We will help the members of the committee. I am a member to add another 4 weeks and to consider part of these revelations and also your contributions. We'll go back and then report back progress. What media will always call progress.
Well, we want it.
By the way, it's my turn.
We want to see actionable recommendations.
Exactly. That's what
Actionable recommendations on the issues we have raised.
Yes.
Why do we give out licenses to Gencos and they produce, and TCN cannot carry what they produce? That's one. What has the minister, since his appointment, done to address that issue? Why do we hand over transformers bought by states and local governments and individuals to discos, and then cables that to discos, and they make money from those things without making, in fact, without maintenance, without injecting new funds, and distribution is deteriorating instead of improving? How can we develop the nation? Why do we have to allow individuals to buy transformers and then go to discos and plead with them to come and connect them to the national grid? And then thereafter, those transformers are owned by the discos. Those cables are owned by the discos without refunds. So it's a big problem. So if the motion has been moved, you can repeat your motion so that way we know we don't make it comprehensive, so that we don't
Thank you, Mr. President. Mahmoud do declare state of emergency on the power sector and ask the Committee on Power to do a more holistic and all-encompassing job on the issue of power sector and report back to the Senate within 4 weeks. I so move, Mr. President.
No, I'm sure we want to say that we should return the report. Part of your recommendation will be that we should recommend to the President, because declaration of a state of emergency in the power sector is not a Senate function.
Thank Senator Akpabio and members of his committee for not only delivering a very timely but also a comprehensive report on the issue of power in Nigeria. Mr. President, over the years, over the 2 decades, power has become a very serious problem that no government has been able to tackle. And we had reports from both houses of the National Assembly at several times in the past. It is imperative, Mr. President, to acknowledge attempts have been made, especially by legislative houses of both the Senate and the House of Representatives, in trying to bring to fore the problems of power in Nigeria. It is imperative to listen to the findings and some of the reports by the committee. By your leave, I will read number 4, aging infrastructure challenges. The minister pointed out that the grid is over 50 years old with obsolete and vulnerable infrastructure subjected to regular vandalism. He asserted that until a comprehensive overhaul of the network is completed, grid disturbance will remain a persistent challenge. He also mentioned ongoing efforts to revamp the power system through the Presidential Power Initiative. Furthermore, on page 6, causes of grid collapses. The MD, in furtherance of his presentation, outlined various causes of grid collapse from the generation side, including unpredictable behavior of generating units, inadequate gas supply, poor coordination of maintenance schedules for gas-fired plants, and negative frequency responses. On the transmission side, he identified several factors contributing to the grid failure, such as lack of operational reserves, support skills, inadequate SCADA and energy management system, vandalism of critical transmission lines, and insufficient communication facilities. Mr. President, we need your attention. No, I won't go.
You are addressing the Senate.
So, Mr. President, it is like a mirror image analysis. If we put a mirror and you look at the mirror, if you are an ugly person, the mirror will show. If you are handsome, the mirror will show. Whatever that the mirror sees.
The mirror shows what you are.
Yeah, the mirror shows what you are.
Nobody can see himself as being ugly or anything. You are always fine.
So, Mr. President, breaking that mirror.
Use powder.
Mr. President, breaking that mirror will not change what you have seen in the mirror, because that is the reality. What am I driving at? Here we have the MD of that processor, the minister of that processor, that are admitting these serious lapses. So over the years, if a minister is admitting it, who should have been doing the job? Senate President? Chairman of the Committee of Power? No. Therefore, over the years, Mr. President, some of this clear indiscretion have not been met with any censure. And therefore, consequently, whoever finds himself will now sit on those lapses. When you are a minister and you run down the narrative that this is an obsolete infrastructure, incompetent staffs, what are you supposed to do? One of the findings that I'm not so happy with, I thought the committee would probably take about 20 years down the line and bring about the budgetary allocation to power sector, year in, year out, so that whoever reads this report will find that there was a lot of money that has gone down the drain. And those monies, some people are responsible for spending that monies. And therefore the report, in my opinion, should have indicated further scrutiny of the spending of the power ministry in the last 2 decades, and try to clearly apportion blames for those who are responsible for such indiscretion. The report was okay, but sir, in my opinion, if we continue to churn out reports without indications of those people who should be sanctioned, we are not making headway. And I would like Mr. President and distinguished senators to reflect on what I said, because this power is key And there was nowhere in this report that suggested the continuous abuse of power grid will stop. And that means tomorrow it can happen, the next tomorrow it can happen. Then what do we do as a nation? What can the parliament do beyond this? So, Mr. President, the report was well articulated, but I think we need to make sure that something will have a takeaways for the future purposes of the parliamentary activity. Thank you.
Well, yes. And I know that you are patronizing distinguished Senator Abaribe. You are short of saying that the report was not insightful enough. But you pointed out that the sanctions were not well articulated, for financial inputs of repair of each of the breakdown of the national grid were not indicated, and the allocations by this National Assembly to the power sector on a yearly basis were not indicated, and even the usage, because in the interaction with them, we should have been able to know what they use whenever the so-called national grid collapses. What do they use to revive it? Because it could also mean that those who revive it can also collapse it. We have had instances where people remove remote cables, and the people who remove the remote cables are people who fix the remote cables. And then they go back to get the contract, and they bring the same remote cables and fix. And wherever they are broke, they go back and move them. And then in the Niger Delta, it's not everybody that can break crude oil pipeline, because sometimes the crude oil pipelines are deep down in the ocean. So it has to be done by experts who were there when the pipelines were installed. Maybe they've retired from various oil companies and they go back, break the pipelines, and the same companies are invited to repair the pipelines, and whenever they don't have enough job, they'll go to another section, break the pipelines, and they'll be invited to do cost analysis, and then they repair the pipelines. So it will need strong action on the part of the minister of power. And then there should also be a recommendation of what should the Senate do to bring this thing to an end. Do we need to invite a committee on the security, including the army, because it's a very critical national asset. Do we need to involve the armed forces, the police, civil defense? Do we need to invite them, those who are responsible for protection of this all-important national asset? It's critical to the industrialization of Nigeria. It's critical to the development. It's critical to investment. And so the report is almost reporting the interaction to us. The report is not telling us what we must do to bring this to an end. Nigerians want to see an end. It's just like insecurity, like banditry, like when we used to have very serious issues on Boko Haram. What do we do? Because at the time it was almost being turned into business. I think that's exactly what is happening in the power sector. Even the idea of national grid collapsing is anathema. It's not something that is known to our country's infrastructural development. It's not something that will encourage any investment. So we must, I was just thinking whether maybe part of your resolutions may involve setting up ad hoc committee to now do proper investigation of the monies sunk into the power sector and why we are where we are. The committee could do it, but the committee is already very friendly with the people they interacted with. From what they are saying, The distinguished Senator Abaribe, you are a gentleman, and we must call a spade a spade. We will look at your recommendations one after the other, but we will not accept further collapse of the national grid, and therefore we must find a way to bring it to an end. And I don't know how we are going to do that, but before we look at the recommendations, I want you to think in that direction. And also there is need for legislative action on the activities of the discos. And Transmission Company of Nigeria is exclusively in the hands of the federal government. How are they running it? There are so many GENCOs that are producing power and they cannot transmit power because up to now investment has not entered that sector. I'm telling you, I built and completed an ongoing power sector in Akwa Ibom. We were producing just 191 megawatts, and they couldn't take more than 80 because the second transmission line from Ikorabasi to Ikorabwene stopped at a place called Barakwa, and that had remained so for 15 years. The only one that we have that can take up to 80 megawatts is the one that moves from Ikorabasi to Iket. That's the only one. And then within the aluminium smelter company, we have 600 megawatts of electricity lying there, even when that place was not privatized. For 10 years, nobody touched 600 megawatts. And 600 megawatts of power could save at least 2 or 3 states. At that time, what were the requirements of Cross River State? What were the requirements of Abia, Akwa Ibom, Douglas, or Port Harcourt? 600 in one location in Ikorabasi. So we should be able to go deeper to know what are they doing. They can't even carry the power from one place to the other. And all the infrastructure we made, like I made sure that we, in my state, I had about 92 to 93% coverage. I used to buy transformers almost on a weekly, monthly basis. And then we strung the lines, and then we gave light to communities. But guess what? When those things were given to the discos through the privatization, the discos never paid 1 naira for any of those things. Instead, those are the things they are managing and making money. They are not making a single investment. And I think it's applicable to almost all the discos. The intention was to give it to them so they can revamp the existing infrastructure and then improve upon it. But instead, they went there to manage it. It's just like what is happening in the oil sector. You will see oil well producing up to 80,000, I don't know how to, producing as much as maybe 80,000 barrels of crude oil a day, and then it is given to an individual who continues to manage it without paying cash cost, without investing, and then eventually, after 3 or 4 years, it comes down to 15,000 barrels of crude oil. Some come down to as low as 5. But the man is still flying his private jets because he made no investment. He had recovered his money within a year. He made no investment and he's not ready. So what should government do under such circumstances? Shouldn't we revoke such licenses, take over, and then improve the production? That is what is happening in the power sector today. So I was thinking that part of your interaction with them will involve asking them, what do we do to improve on the power distribution in the country? The discos have failed, as far as I'm concerned. The people just took the discos, sat down, managed what the governors and the federal state governments put in, and they are making their money. No matter where it collapses, they are not interested. So it is going down. Distribution is going down. If they took distribution at 90% in any particular state, so long as they are making money, instead they will increase the tariff in order to make up for the loss of the infrastructure. So it's very wide. I don't know whether the recommendations are far-reaching enough, but we will look at line by line. Yes, distinguished Senator Nenye.
You recall, Mr. Senate President, by a leave, this report, I'm not a member of the sequel of timelines, outlines that the Senate gave them. It was the activity within. So if we want to go further, the Senate now can give them further instruction to add to this report and bring it within a specified period of time. And I'm sure the chairman has made it very clear that this was just their in-house activity. So if the Senate decides to now say, okay, go further, give us A, B, C, D, we can just do that, sir.
I also thought the report would include something like inviting the operators of TCN, the Minister of Power, and others to appear before the Senate to tell us what they are doing to stop further collapse of the national grid, and also to tell us why the discos are still in the hands of individuals who cannot improve on the infrastructure years after they were privatized, and also to tell us how can we move the power sector forward when the transmission is still 100% owned by the federal government, and we are saying that we are privatized the sector. How do you privatize the sector? When the GENCO, you give a generating company a license, and it produces 100 megawatts, is yet to provide the transmission line. So what do you do? So I don't know, you understand what I mean? So it's like we are not making progress in the power sector, and yet billions of dollars have been sunk into the power sector. So something is wrong somewhere that this August Assembly should find out. Something is wrong somewhere. So that's my personal opinion. So I don't know whether you have a solution.
Well, thank you, West. Mr. President, with your deep knowledge of this sector, I don't think there's anything to add again, because you have read everything. Maybe I thought you have read the report before now, but from the way you're explaining out of personal experience, maybe as a governor of Akpabio, you have had first-hand experience in all these matters. But I would like us to depart here today by this Senate agreeing to declare an emergency in the power sector and allow the committee, this same committee, to go back, give them more time to go back to deal with some of the issues that you have raised, because you have raised very fundamental issues. Because a situation where the committee recommendation is saying we will ask Mr. President to invite stakeholders. No, we need more legislative action on the matter. We don't need to ask Mr. President to do it. We have all it takes to do it. So I am saying, coming with the emotion, Mr. President, that we do receive the report of the Committee on Power, but ask them to go back and take another 4 weeks to deal with the real issues. Because they are saying that the agencies will tell us how much they have received and how much they have expended. Why they should be telling us, the committee should be telling us, it should be in the report. How much have we expended in the power sector in the past 20 years? Who are involved? I would have been toeing the line of other committee. But because Senator Akpabio is not very knowledgeable in this sector, we will ask that committee to go back, give them under 4 weeks, but this nation will declare state of emergency in the power sector. This committee did not even contain anything about band A, band B, that people are being charged now. People are paying through the nose to even light one bulb in their house. So these are not some of the things that we should be tolerated. So, Mr. President, this is my motion.
And villages are famous, and the discos are there, and then the idea of estimated billing, where they don't even give you meters, and then even when they don't give you light, they come and drop money, or they come and drop a bill for you to pay. So we know you are very, very knowledgeable in the power sector, and you've been on it for a long time. But that's why I said you are very familiar. I hope I didn't say derogatory. You don't need derogatory, man. I just said you are familiar with the power sector. I mean, you've headed the committee. This is not the first time, so you know what is wrong. But we are concerned that the citizens are paying for power they are not getting. Many of them are being built through estimation because there is no meter. And even the discos cannot even provide meter. They are not adding value. They are not providing transmitters, transmission, transformers. So it's an executive function. But the recommendations that will come before us can include that when a much more insightful action is taken in terms of the investigation. In fact, we are requesting investigation into the funds expended in the power sector in the last 10 to 20 years. We are saying why we want to investigate why the discos are not performing. We want to investigate why the collapse of the national grid is becoming more frequent, something that cannot happen in many countries. I want to investigate what the power minister has done, the actions taken so far to stop further collapse of the national grid, so it does not turn into another business, putting the entire country into darkness for certain people who do the repairs to make money. So and also, is it not possible for the Senate to repeal most of the laws that have made it impossible for the power sector to work, so that whatever reforms this administration will make, the renewed hope agenda will become realistic, where electricity works in Nigeria. So if we think that it is, the committee can handle these suggestions and revert to us in 4 weeks, we can take it that we have moved a motion for extension of time within which the committee can do further work as suggested by the Senate, and that the extension of time 4 weeks. Distinguished Senator Oshiomole, you have seconded the motion.
Yeah, I do with the amendment that it should include all options. Yes. All options. Enactment, repeal, and reenactment in a manner that will radically protect consumers.
Thank you.
I so second, sir, with those amendments.
Yes.
Mr. President, I so second, even though what this has done, as the comments from the Senate President, everybody, is that he has expanded the scope.
Yes.
We only focused on grid collapse.
No, that's why I said.
Now that he has expanded, yes, we are very, and we asked for 6 weeks, Mr. Yes. President.
Okay. Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that we do extend the time within which the committee come back to us, and also increase the scope of work from just the collapse of the grid to the non-functionality of the TCN and the discos in the country. Those in support of the motion that they be given for 6 additional weeks to complete the job and make strong recommendations to this August Assembly, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So let me thank members of the Senate for their contributions, and assure the committee that we will give you all the backing to enable you to do your work, and we hope that your recommendations will improve the situation of power supply in the country, and then also help the common man to realize the worth of what he's paying for, and stop all these estimated billings, and also give us a clear insight as to improvements, if any, made by the owners of the discos since they took over, and why the TCN has not been able to protect the transmission lines, and why we should even have continuous collapse of the national grid that will affect the entirety of the country. How can we develop? How can we have investment when these kind of things are allowed to happen? So maybe you will invite security agents to also tell you, and you will recommend to us if we have to have a standby security force that will protect the national grid from further collapse. So I thank all of you for your contributions, and the 4 weeks or 6 weeks are added, and we expect a more robust report before the Senate. Thank you.